Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It's 1 o'clock, so I would like to now, or sorry, not 1 o'clock. My goodness, 4 o'clock. I'm sorry. I would like to call our special council meeting to order at 4 o'clock on April the 1st, after April Fools. Council, I'd like to recognize that we are holding this meeting on the traditional lands of the Sooke and Shaanu Nations. And I'll turn your attention to the agenda, and that is that the agenda for the April 1st, 2026 special meeting of council to be adopted as presented. It's moved by Councillor St. Pierre and Beddoes. Is anyone opposed? Seeing none, that carries unanimously, and we move right into our public question and comment period. So I would like to invite members of the public, of which we have many folks here in the gallery. Thank you for joining us today. This would be your one opportunity to address council on today's budget. So we look forward to hearing from you. Please introduce yourself, and we have 2 minutes for each speaker, please.
Ellen Lewis. I just want to say I've been in business in many businesses, some of the toughest ones, and farming, gas station, and restaurant. And we went through some pretty tough times in the 70s, 80s when costs went up. And we had started out with 16 staff, and it was a lucrative business at the time, but then things changed. Different businesses happened to come up. It's a long story. Anyway, we had to lay off staff. Tough to do because they were family staff, but we did. So I just want to say the District of Sooke has realized a significant amount of monies through COVID startup monies and grants since 2020. The amount grants received from 2019 to 2022 were $15,832,862. Yet our taxes keep going up. What's the issue? We have $81 million in DCC contributions, yet we're talking about a referendum for $41 million for through bypass, when this is what DCCs are for. In 2018, our population was 14,485, and the payroll for 2018 was 4.2 million. In 2026, our population is 17,983, an increase of 20%, and our payroll is 11.6 million. We have an increase in population of 3,500 with the 20% increase, but we have a payroll increase of about close to 200%, triple payroll in 5 years. I think we know what needs to be done. I hope the council is diligent. This is our monies, and I want you to really think carefully what we're doing with our monies. $150,000 was taken from the RCMP reserves for tax decrease to bring the taxes down. So will that be made up in next year in taxes to replace the $150,000?
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lurs. We're at time, but you're always welcome.
I'm sorry?
We're at after the 2 minutes. There may be other speakers, so we'll invite you back first.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Tour Corporate Officer?
Your Worship, I just wanted to advise you in the meeting that while Ms. Lewis was speaking, Councillor McMath joined the meeting virtually. So she is now present.
Thank you, Councillor McMath. I'll just turn to you to please test your video and your audio.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Okay.
Great.
We'll see
I just
when
can't
we
have
have
my-
the screen off. Okay, thank you. Welcome to our next speaker.
Hello, my name is Tracy Clark. I'm a taxpayer here in Sooke. And it is my understanding that today council will vote on whether to pass 1 or 3 proposed budgets, each of which include a tax increase of 8, 10, 12% respectively. And I have heard that you've said that you're leaving no stone unturned and looking into every nook and cranny for savings to taxpayers. Yet every year we're still forced to pay an increase in our property taxes, leaving less income in our pockets, while every year the number and salaries of administrative staff increase disproportionately, i.e. higher than the increase in the population here in Sooke. In our current environment, we're facing a potential crash, like we all know what's going on in the world, I assume. We're facing a potential crash in the world economy, skyrocketing energy prices that affect almost every aspect of our lives. In Canada, we're also being hit today with the industrial carbon tax increases, which again will trickle down to those who can least afford it, especially with respect to food prices. Food inflation is up 7%, groceries up 30% since 2021. All staples and everyday items still climbing ever higher, just to name a few things. More and more, citizens are having to make serious trade-offs and sacrifices just to get by. And I believe it behooves our council to serve the Sooke taxpayers responsibly and act prudently with the funds to which they've been entrusted. Could we not try to further reduce the taxes payable, if not eliminate another increase, if I'd be so bold as to say, by foregoing projects that are not crucial to the ongoing operation?
Thank you, Ms. Clark. We're also
Up-
at time,
Okay,
so.
could I just finish the sentence?
Sure.
Thank you. The ongoing operation of a community, for example, the climate initiative. If not, I respectfully ask if it is truly the case that every cost-saving opportunity has been identified. Are you confident that every line item, every expense, and every resource, human and otherwise, is deemed absolutely essential to the ongoing operation of our municipality? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, our next speaker, please.
My name is Helen Ritz, I live in Sooke. I just want to say thank you to the council for really so thoughtfully for so many meetings going through the budget line by line. And I do appreciate that nobody wants to raise taxes. But while 12% sounds like a large number, our tax base is really small. And as it says in the agenda today, or it's read somewhere, Victoria, a 1% tax increase brings in $1.8 million of revenue. Sadly, in Sooke, 1% only brings us about 145,000. And I think we all agree that doesn't go far. Even at 12%, we are deferring essentials. This is not an aggressive budget. It's a constrained one. Even at 12%, there's no increased funding for rainwater infrastructure maintenance. Even at 12%, we are carrying a lot of risks. I beg you not to touch the asset management fund. It is essential to the well-being of our community. Do not cut this fund. I actually think it probably should be higher, but I realize that's a lot to ask. 2% asset management puts in less than $300,000 per year into this fund. It is not keeping pace with reality. There is an unrepaired sinkhole on Brownsea where I live. And if I read the report right, repairing it is close to $1 million. That's more than 3 years of savings of the asset management fund. You know, we've had 3 sinkholes alone. One failure wipes out years of savings. So really the bottom line is deferring costs now it just means higher costs in the future. Keeping taxes artificially low isn't savings, it's delaying. It's kicking the problem to future council and future taxpayers. I ask that you pass 12%.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Bonnie Townsend. I've had the privilege of living in the area these past years and have come to know the changes in the district. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to speak today. I have a propensity to speak long on certain topics that I'm passionate about, but I'm going to read from this document just to keep it succinct and to the point. With the chance to review some documentation recently, I've learned much. I am mindful that the council has much to consider today and the months to come in terms of the direction of the municipality. That despite that there has been incremental tax hikes these past years, pardon me, this hike has compounded and will fall somewhere between 45 and 47%. If we do the math Another 12% will push that number over 62% since 2022, over 4 years. Wow. But here's the clincher. A 12% ask now is not just 12%. In fact, it adds another 17% to the total increase since 2022, as it compounds on previous increases. From what I've read, given the roadmap that this municipality is choosing to embark upon, there are some incredibly huge implications to this district and its residents. Now, some of you might fully appreciate the impact that it has on households, families, pensioners, and business owners. Some of you may not fully appreciate the province is on a fiscal cliff looking into the abyss and may have to pivot to from transfer payments of free money to the municipalities by way of grants and subsidies. I've read in some of the documents that the province may be in a position where it will have to address other priorities such as healthcare, debt servicing. So you're no doubt aware that the credit rating has been downgraded also. No doubt taxpayers who live in Sooke will be forced to pony up at this level of government also. So you see, the implications of the decisions of this council and what they make are great. I understand some of you have aspirations.
Thank you, Ms. Townsend. We're at 2 minutes as
So
well,
I'll
so
conclude with this, with the cost of living, including food, shelter, now gas are at an all-time high, people will be faced to renew their mortgages these next couple of years, and unemployment is creeping at an all-time high. And you may have known, I'm wrapping this up, you may have learned before the pandemic that 50% of Canadians were one paycheck away from not being able to survive, keep a roof over their heads, pay their bills, and put food on the table for their children. And the lineups at food banks increase. It was with this, I simply state, please consider the implications of what you're asking those who are simply taking each day as it comes and hoping for some form of relief. They have looked for efficiencies in their own households. Some can no longer afford to go to work. In fact, they're calling in because they can't afford the gas to get to work.
okay, thank you. Thank
Ask
you.
to
I'd
make a
like to make
decision,
space for
common
others.
sense decision, and consider the implications. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our next speaker today. Any other first-time speakers?
Great. Okay. My name is Christine Halla. I am a taxpayer in Sooke. I would like to express my deep concern over the proposed property tax increases, with the cost of living rising in about every area I can think of. This extra $240 per year in property taxes is going to be too much for many, especially seniors on fixed pensions. If those seniors cannot pay their property taxes, they will be forced to defer, which many seem to be doing already. Unfortunately, the provincial government this year has decided to make it even harder for people who may need to defer due to rising costs. Instead of paying prime less 2% simple interest to defer in 2025, you will now have to pay prime plus 2% compounding on outstanding taxes for 2026 going forward. This is not an April Fool's joke. This is actually in place. So I hope that as you make these tough decisions tonight, that you may consider wisely the consequences of your actions and how it will affect the citizens of Sooke going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other speakers today?
That one, perfect. Hi, Dave Saunders, Mayor, Council, staff, citizens. I'm representing the Saunders family, and I've been, since the last term, this term, I've been trying to advocate that citizens are hurting, and I've been trying to advocate for affordability. I can tell you that the majority of council has not listened to me. I've offered to meet extended periods of time, numerous times. I can show you all the emails to make it more affordable. I was a mayor during the 2008 worldwide recession. I can tell you what we're going through right now is worse. Our Saunders Family Foundation supports citizens in this community. I can tell you very clearly that, again, through email or this voice, that they are struggling. I do not see a strategy from this mayor and council, I'm sorry, and the majority of council. I see what I've experienced as not listening to your public, both public hearing wise and in the audience. I've tried to make it cheaper and more affordable for citizens. I've tried to bring my knowledge base to this council. You've simply not listened to me. And in fact, you've been obstructionist with respect to my guidance on that. I'm not a know-it-all by any means, but I've lived and breathed a lot of stuff. I asked specific questions about traffic related to the OCP. I asked about density. The density is too large. I find it ironic that people are in the audience or previous people are advocating for increased DPAs when we can't afford our current situation related to environmentalism. We have to get back to the essentials. That's what we need to do. I asked very clearly about the referendum. It's still not structured, still hasn't been costed out. I have an email from the CAO saying it's going to be determined on April 23rd. That will affect the budget. It took me 45 minutes to get here in traffic. I still see no strategy. We're at 62% if it's voted on at 12%. I can tell you that the citizens that I deal with that are struggling right now simply can't afford it. Again, I offer my assistance in any guidance respecting of your new OCP, which not my wording.
Okay,
Other
thank you,
wording.
Mr. Saunders. We're at time.
Thanks. I hope you realize that a lot of citizens are calling the OCP Sooke Ford right now. Sooke Ford.
Okay, thank you. Other speakers today?
Can everyone hear me? My name is Natalia Saddington. I'm not a mathematician. I don't have numbers to present to you, but I can tell you that as the person who manages the money in my household, if my husband came home from work and the money was gone and there was no food in the fridge, no gas in the car, and our bills weren't paid, and I said, you know what? I need more money. He would be perfectly within his right to ask me, where is it all going? I know that our taxes in the past 10 years for our household alone has nearly doubled. And I still see the same potholes in the same places. I still see that even when I was in high school, we didn't have enough police to cover the area. I'm in my 30s now, and that was a problem 15, 20 years ago, still a problem now. So what I'm hearing as somebody who's having to pay this stuff, my husband having to work 6 days a week to afford to take care of us. Yeah, those problems that we had a decade ago, we still have them now. We're asking you for more money. Yeah, we have looked everywhere. We've turned over every stone. And you know what? We just need more money. But these problems have been going on for a long time. And even if there isn't half of Sooke in this place, every single person that I know that looks at their own bills every day knows that something is not adding up here. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Other speakers today? Do I have any other first-time speakers? Anyone speaking for a first time? Okay, any second-time speakers?
Ellen Lewis. So I want to speak about the liaison officer that the Sooke District 62 School District lost $3 million from provincial funding, and it was downloaded onto us for liaison officer. Is it necessary, as a previous speaker said? I don't know, but we do have staff sergeants, 2 staff sergeants that are retired, and perhaps we should be looking at getting a volunteer to go to the schools, or some responsible adult to go to school, or maybe to the parents, straighten them out. I don't know that it's changing anything, putting police in the school, and it's unfortunate that Sam's no longer there. I also want to say you had the COVID Safe Starter for 2.9 million, and your revenue increased 135.89% from 2019 to 2022. Yet our taxes in that same time period, went up 39.75%. So is that responsible spending? I think that we've not been conscientious. Enough people haven't been watching, and I think the council as well has not been watching on the spending issue. We don't have to spend. We don't have to do all the things that we're doing. but we should be looking after our roads. The same potholes, as was previous speaker said, those potholes have been there for years. You go down Kaltassin and you lose your tire in there. It's awful. And we spend money on things like, I don't know, I saw them on Otter Point here clearing off the grass. Meanwhile, there's holes everywhere. Who decided that's where the money should go? And I think we have to be looking a little more diligently where we're spending our money and prioritize. I think we have to be a lot more diligent and a lot more stringent. And I do know how to do that. I was raised in a family of 12 children with many other children added, and we all survived. So I think we can survive with less and less goodies. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lourdes. Is there any other speakers left in the room that would like to either complete any comments or add something else? Okay, well, thank you everyone for your comments today and others for attending the meeting as well as those online. So I'll turn over to our staff, please, just to give any highlights or report out on today's reports.
Perfect. Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just start briefly and just provide a bit of a summary of how we got here today, and then turn it back over to council for any questions or any clarification. We have staff, I believe, from every department here available to answer some questions. Sergeant Wilcox is here, as well as our new Director of Operations, Jeff Miller, on day 3. So he may not know all the weeds of all the projects, but will be available to answer some questions if necessary. So yeah, I guess included in the report today, this is based on the motion provided from council at the March 23rd meeting, and that was to provide additional options for the 2026 to 2020 or to 2030 5-year financial plan. As council's aware, originally we started, there was, all in, everyone at getting everything they would like option was up to 18.5%, which everyone knew was not realistic and plausible. Various meetings and conversations with council occurred over numerous meetings there, highlighted in the report, that resulted in the 12% figure that was presented to council on March 23rd. Hearing that conversation, and the 12% option, basically the biggest, how it got from the 18% to 12%, the biggest savings were resulting from reallocating the funding for the police officers, as that is a very expensive, emergency services, unfortunately, is a very expensive service the district provides. So that was able to go a long way to help us get to the 12% option. Fast forward, as well, including the 12% option, there was a $20,000 reduction to CAO contingency, as well as a $20,000 reduction to council contingency. And again, included in that option is $84,000 of salary savings included, because for 2026, there is no plan, it's not there is no plan to actively, if any position becomes vacant in the district in 2026, there's no plan to currently post that. We are looking to look for efficiencies, redeploy duties, leverage software and technology where possible to still maintain the same levels of service, however, do it more efficiently and take advantage of some technology that may result in that. So based on some known departures this year, there is some funding that has been included in the option to get to 12%, and that is still included in the option in the next page, where it's the 12% scenario, 10% scenario, and 8% scenarios. So yeah, for the foreseeable future, there will be no active postings with the district unless it's a critical position, similar to emergency services like firefighters, for example. Maybe a bit more on, this budget is always a challenge every year. I've been sitting around this table since 2018 now. And it's always a challenge to balance the community needs versus, community wants and must-haves. And as now Councillor Bateman said numerous times, this, sometimes council is required to be, the parent and make difficult decisions for the long-term benefit of the district. And I believe that's what council's been trying to do over the last few years. As numerous people have mentioned, the part of the problem with the district is 1% of taxes only brings in right now $145,000. Back in 2018, it only, if council remembers, it only brought in $66,000. So that is a big shift in that has been helped by the more residents moving and more businesses opening. We've been definitely working on improving our commercial tax base versus residential tax base, because that is a different tax, tax rates that get assigned to the commercial versus the residential. We've made small changes on that. You'll see in the tax rate bylaw that comes forward every year, there has been a small shift in the more commercial businesses. I believe it used to be in the 90% residential. We're in the, high 80% now. So, again, more work to do, but it's coming along as well. I think something that will help with diversifying revenue sources is the district has applied for a $100,000 grant to undertake an employment land strategy. So we're waiting very soon to hopefully hear some positive results on receiving that grant. And I think that will help provide some information to council to make some informed decisions that will help increase our commercial tax base is the idea. Or part of the goal of that. You'll notice in the 2026 budget, I can confirm there is no net new municipal positions permanent positions being asked for. There was funding requested in the 12% option for a GIS co-op student, and that is a student that is currently working with us on a temporary basis. There was some grant funding that it covered half of their salary for the year. And because most of the projects they are currently working on, like 911 and other asset management integration technology projects, there was a request to include temporary funding for that year for the remaining 38,000, sorry, for the rest of the year for that position. So yeah, other than that, there was no, and even that is a temporary position. So there's no district of municipal positions being requested at this time outside of the known hires for RCMP and fire, should council support this budget. And maybe again, just highlighting too, we are, staff are very aware and understanding that the tax increases that people are seeing are not just from municipal operations. We collect for the school district, for the hospital district, for the CRD, for many others. And we all appreciate every one of them are increasing their budgets every year. So the compounding effect of that does, unfortunately increase taxes. So that being said, staff have, gone back to the, as directed by council, gone back and relooked and come up with some options of what council could consider for a 10% or an 8% scenario. For the 10% scenario, it includes two RCMP officers, and I've confirmed with Sergeant Wilcox, just clarifying his request for 2026 would be for two officers, one being the school liaison officer and one being a regular RCMP officer, and has worked with us to prorate the start date and funding if those positions are approved by council till 2020, till later in September of 2026 this year. As council's aware from 2023, agreeing, supporting the transition to 24-hour coverage for RCMP and fire is a years-long commitment. This is not something that's going to be done in 1 year, and it is, it is an expensive commitment, and staff are very sensitive to that and are doing our best to provide council some accurate costing on what the out years would look like for those costs. So in the 10% scenario includes the two RCMP officers, including the community liaison requested by the RCMP. It includes a request for July 1 start date for firefighter 14. And that's just to get some efficiencies for overtime savings. And if we're going to be doing a competition anyways, rather than having somebody start December 31st, if they can start, which was initially supported by council with the latest round of bargaining with IFF, the request is if we can start them sooner, we should have some overall overtime savings with that. As well included in the 10% scenario, because investment in parks and trails was the #1 community priority when we did the budget surveys and phase 1 budget engagement. So included in that still remains the auxiliary parks workers and any of the small adjustments to the parks workers or the parks overall budget from community services. To reach the 10% option, the reduction for the community association has been included. And as well as the village initiative remains in there as an additional add-on. And the funding for the GIS student and the zoning and building bylaw updates have been removed and will either be re-examined later this year if there's budget available, or potentially move to 2027 if that's required. And the final piece adjustment that made to get to the 10% option was a reduction of asset management from 2% to 1.75%. So those are a few of and again, staff are trying to be, I hear the residents' comments about, where's everything else? Well, over the years, I think council will realize when we're going back to watch those meetings, like council has done line by lines numerous times over the years, cut expenses everywhere we can. And at the end of the day, unless council directs service reductions at this time, our focus for each year has been on internal efficiencies, finding what we can there, and then presenting new requests to council for decision points, and showing how they align with either council priorities or community feedback. So that includes the 10% option. The 8% option is definitely not something staff would recommend. It defers everything. It basically reduces the asset management to 1%. It cuts any new request and only includes one RCMP officer, and everything else has been now deferred, then would be deferred to 2027 potentially at this point. Maybe we've tried to include a bunch of information, hopefully to make it more clear to the readers on where this comes from, the payoffs, and happy at that point, maybe to pause there, and we'll defer to the chair on where you would like to go next. And to one point, final clarity, the bylaw in front of council includes the items that is up for council for consideration of 3 readings, includes the 10% scenario. So staff can be here, Mr. Curry and Ms. Liu are here. And if council would like to change any numbers from that 10% scenario, there is the option we can make those adjustments today. And if council supports it, still give 3 readings as amended today. So just for clarity, the bylaw, if council gave 3 readings to the bylaw, 940, that includes the items in the 10% column on page 13. So I'll leave that there and turn it over to council for questions.
Okay, thank you. So we are sitting as council now, so a resolution has to go forward. So I understand that bylaw number 938 was defeated. That was the 12% scenario. So 940 in front of us is 10%. So I'm going to start with that. And that council give first, second, and third reading to the 2026 to 30 5-year financial plan bylaw number 940. Sorry, and leave it at that. And that would be 10%. The as amended piece would only come in should council make amendments to shift this. So it's a starting point. Is there a mover on that resolution?
Move to get it on the table.
Councillor Beddoes is moving to put it on the floor. Is there a seconder? Okay, I will second it by Councillor Bateman. So that puts the bylaw at 10% on the floor. Over to Councillor Beddoes, please.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, it's never easy. We've done this a few years now, and there are some interesting things on the 10% one that we didn't know. Our staff sergeant indicated that he is going to adjust it by 1 officer for $67,000, which helps. So that's still a little alarming. We are still on target for 24/7 policing, I understand. Is that correct? Can I ask that question, Your Worship?
Yep. I'd like to just ask our base commander, if you don't mind coming forward into the hot seat here. But council, we just have to contain our comments and questions specifically to what's in front of us. Can you go ahead and repeat your question?
Yeah,
please?
I guess the 24/7 policing is not in jeopardy by losing that position.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor Beddoes. From my understanding with the 10% is that the 2 RCMP officers are still on
The
the
liaison
table.
one and the regular constable.
Yeah, so in order to make this work, instead of starting to fund it, like pretty quick, like now, to get the positions rolling, we've delayed funding until September of 2026. And that was part of the reason why we were able to reduce quite significantly on the 2 officers. But correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the 10% still has 2 RCMP officers on the table, 1 school liaison and 1 frontline policing officer.
Correct. So in your original presentation too, you said that without that other second officer and the liaison officers, that something would slip. So is something slipping in your detachment when it comes to this level of manpower?
Yeah, the school resource officer came up from 2 different things. One was the Let's Talk Sooke budget survey, public budget survey, which was highly well received by the general public. And I'll invite anybody to read the report, which I brought up to council on the January 19th meeting. And the second one, officer, was to help with our dealing with our frontline policing, our calls for service. Now, we are able to find some efficiencies. I would obviously rather have 3 than 2, but part of the longer term plan, and especially with what we've been seeing previously in our with the youth and providing that extra service for the youth, I think having those 2 officers doing those 2 specific things is a very well balanced approach to the needs of the community and the will of the council.
Okay, and the ratio between residents and police officers, that 1 less officer, you have any idea what that number is? It used to, I think the province is 850, 1 police officer, 850. Any idea what that means? I guess what I'm concerned about, Chief, is that I heard a lot of feedback from the residents about safety, or crime rate has gone up considerably, a town growing. And one of the things we heard from the public is they wanted to see more police presence. And I even heard it here tonight. And my concern is if we lose that position, are we going to be able to meet our needs? And I mean our needs because it's our community, with the police staffing that you have.
Yeah. So the extra 3rd position came as a council resolution, I believe, I want to say 6 weeks ago, in regards to having staff look for the funding of 2 police officers, and these are general duty police officers that would be taking calls for service and that sort of thing, plus 1 school liaison officer. Correct. In order to meet the 12% threshold, what we did was instead of the 3 that was on that proposal, we have 2 officers, but one of them is school liaison. So from my January 19th meeting, and in one of my slides that I have in the presentation, my ask from council was for 2 police officers. Now, originally I said 2 frontline officers, but from the feedback that I've received from the council and also the community feedback as well, having one of those 2 officers as a school liaison, we felt that would be a more balanced service delivery approach for the community. So we're actually not taking anything away. We were looking at potentially adding a 3rd officer, but that would just bring the property tax increase too high, and that's where that 18% came out. So we're still sticking with the original 2, which would still maintain our service levels.
Okay, thank you.
And have more officers out on the road.
I'll let other councillors have a go now. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Did you have anything?
Yeah, I could ask a few
Just
questions.
wait, please, while I clarify. You do have some questions for our staff.
So I have staff,
Okay.
and as the seconder, I have comments as
Yes,
well.
so I just want to invite our base commander to
Please stay.
move
Okay.
if he wants to, if he needs to.
I
or
would like
stay.
to,
Okay,
we'll
thank you.
start with questions for him. Thank you. So to be clear, this, you said school police liaison officer, but / community liaison. It's a hybrid position, to be determined how that officer will split her time between school and the town center and its needs.
Yeah, the position would generally robustly be for our youth and our schools. However, within that position, there is the community aspect as well. And initially, when I was talking about it, was perhaps we can have a more of a hybrid type of model. The issue with that is, especially when when I was speaking with the schools about their needs, it came very clear that having a full-time school resource officer was the way to go. And just for context, it's not just our this person is going to be servicing just Edward Milne or Journey. It's going to be those two schools plus all of the elementary schools. And I believe the student body, and don't quote me on this, but is around 1,600 kids. So having a part-time, even if it's only 25, 30 hours a week officer 3 days a week in the schools and doing other things in the community, I don't think is as efficient to build those relationships with the youth, especially with trust and engagement and activities and that sort of thing. So to your point about the community liaison position, certainly you mentioned some groups before. In order to supplement that, I would like to take that on more robustly than I have in the past. So we can focus this position more on the youth, and then I can take a bigger lead when it comes to the other stuff you're looking for.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for having EMCS and Journey Middle School principals right in support of this position, very strong support. And the Chamber of Commerce, of course, is very much in support of that role you will take with working with businesses to ensure increased safety in the town center in light of recent incidents. You did argue very persuasively for that GIS disclosure clerk as an individual who would free up your officer's time and take away that pile of paperwork that bogs you down. You're not getting that this year. So that is a necessary sacrifice, I suppose, in what we're trying to create an austerity budget here.
I'll defer to the director of finance, but I believe there is a way to still have that. I'll defer to them, but that may not be taken off completely. So
Over to staff, please.
Yeah, just for clarity, through the chair to Councillor Bateman. The disclosure clerk, while not fully funded this year, staff through the motion council supported, we're going to take away the 3 positions that had just been assessed and then reassess it, regroup on what potential new job description could look like, and with the hope of there would be enough internal savings that position could potentially be, if ends up being created and filled later this year, or reporting back to council on with a bit more information at this time, because we just don't know for sure where, if jobs get reassessed, if duties are removed and all that stuff. So not necessarily completely off the shelf, just no dedicated funding at this time. We were hoping to repurpose current funding.
Okay, thank you. So that's just a comment here, a kind of motivation for this. I'm very much in support of that. I believe it's now an 11.5% scenario now that we've removed one of the 3 police officers. And as much as I earlier just mentioned an austerity budget, and that might create some disbelief in the audience seeing the kind of numbers that have been progressed over this last decade, I think. And we look back to the period immediately before the last decade when there was 0 or no tax increases, 0 or very low tax increases. In 2023, we as a council committed to 24/7 fire and police. And in 2024, we moved into asset management as well. So that is the lion's share of these increases. I think when I came onto council, one of the key things around this, the district of Sooke, was the need to establish a more stable, professional, full service organization. And I think over these last number of years, that's exactly what's being created here at the Roy Opp open house last night. I was chatting with one of their representatives, and that's exactly what they look for in a community when they want to invest. And if they're going to invest in this community, means they want to see that the basics are covered and that they have a supportive staff to work with, or a full scale staff to work with. Looking at the 10% scenario and seeing the community association, for example, their $70,000 is eliminated in this scenario. The community association came here 2 months ago and argued very persuasively that local municipalities in this region often are involved directly with what the community association supplies to the district. So they came to us and said, we would like 35,000 each for the operations and ongoing maintenance of Fred Milne Park and Art Morris Park. And again, yeah, so I'm curious as to why through you to staff, the community association has been eliminated from 10% scenario. Just the thinking in terms of how you chose certain items to eliminate and certain items to keep.
Through your worship to Councillor Bateman, the community association item was chosen based on the amount of the ask. Because if you see, even eliminating all those other things didn't produce enough money to get to a 10% scenario. Our understanding is, I guess the thought was, staff will always be working with the community association, and perhaps we could more fulsomely flesh out what their actual needs are and present new council after the election a more comprehensive revision to service agreement at this time, and see if they would be able to get by without those funds for 2026 just based on the fiscal realities. However, that is definitely an option for council to introduce some of that funding back. So no, and just in the interest of something had to go, their request was pretty material in the overall scheme of things.
Okay. So I'll just close by saying I'm a taxpayer as well, and I don't like to see my taxes increase on my salary. I don't have a pension, but I do want to live in a community where I can call the police and ensure that they will show up at my doorstep. I want to ensure that if my house is on fire, that we have a suitable police force where they can come in and rescue me and my cat and my wife, and not in a team of two, not being able to enter that burning building. And I definitely want, when I hear today that our potholes are not being filled, they are being filled routinely. That's what that asset management fund is all about. And I do want one more last question. And I see in the 2025 plan here that we had $600,000 in asset management, and 548 was spent in this last year for capital projects. So basically our asset management reserve is already being utilized in fulsome fashion. So you're left this year at the end of the year with last year, 64,891. Like what would happen in a sinkhole on Dufour? Where does that get paid? How do you pay for repairing the sinkhole on Dufour?
Through your worship to Councillor Bateman, I can start, and perhaps Ms. Lou or someone can add on if necessary. So when emergency works happen, that's when any internal savings that have been realized in another department potentially or access for funding, depending on the cost of the emergency repair, borrowing could be considered as an option for it. But for smaller, for Dufour, for example, for that would be basically, depending on the time of the year, either utilizing the existing budget, or if it's near the end and that budget has been stretched, is re-examining the other budgets that have been approved that haven't been fully spent and redeploying some of those funds to get the repair happening. Because when emergencies happen, we don't really have much options but to repair it. So it does make it more challenging. If necessary, we bring back, depending on how significant or material someone would be. If it warranted an amended financial plan, that was something that potentially could come back to council. But usually we start internal and try and find the money internally. And then if that's not an option, provide council with some decision points.
May also be like charters where the road was crumbling and falling apart. So half the road gets shut down and traffic gets diverted in a different way until such a time comes along that the whole road is replaced. So it may not be repaired. It may just sit, depending on the extent of what it is at the time. Okay, I have Counselor Pearson, then St. Pierre.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Staff Sergeant is gone from his chair there, but
Would you like, do you have questions for this?
yeah, I have.
Sergeant?
Actually,
Okay, if
look,
I
no
could
question.
please welcome
Well-
Base Commander Wilcox back, please.
good. Okay, so through the chair, so do we have an average price of an officer? I've got written down here 280K. Is that is it a little bit plus or minus
I
280?
believe it's 266,000.
Okay.
Now, we don't get paid that.
No.
That is the all-in cost for an officer. So that's obviously salary and pension
Mhm.
eats up a big chunk of that. That's also training, equipment, IT support, various other things, vehicles, all the stuff that I'm wearing, that sort of thing.
Gas for the vehicles. So my question is then, if we're going to start funding this at September, which is about 70 something K per officer, starting in September of 2026, that means there's 140 or plus deficit that's going to be going on to the budget in 2027 for those, just to maintain those two officers. Is that the way I'm understanding that?
Yeah, you're correct. So the thought behind this, especially to reduce it from the original 18% mark, is we can start these positions later, more notably at the beginning of the school year. And the thought behind this was, instead of paying for an entire officer for an entire year, we can spread that cost out over 2 years. Yes, the full cost will be next year, but the property tax percentage increase is going to be spread out more over on a 2-year basis.
Okay. Yeah. So, and your projection through the chair, the projection is to have 30 officers by 2030, correct? Well, that's what I was reading in the.
Yeah. So there was a slide in my January 19th presentation that said that on the very high end. Do I think we need that? And it's by 2031. So it's a 5-year plan. No, I don't think that's going to happen. The likely scenario, and it depends on the will of the council and how much service that they need or they want, but it'd likely be more in between 24 and 27. It also depends on the rate of growth, because remember, we're starting fairly far behind. We've only had 3 police officers authorized since 2008. So we went from 11, now we're at 14. And part of the reason why we have 24-hour policing was we were able to lobby the provincial government to provide 2 provincial policing officers, which actually got us over the minimum threshold for that. And then last year, council was able to authorize 2 more positions, which started our GIS unit. Now we're catching up on the budgeting and the funding for that. So I think it'd be likely in between the 24 to 27 mark, but it depends on a number of factors and what the new council would like to see.
Okay. And when that starts getting baked into the 2027 year budget, where's the lifespan of the office, the facility? Where are we getting to on that as well? Because that's all, and I mean, I'm asking you hypothetical questions, but again, this council has we're turning things over to a new council fairly shortly, and there's going to be some big surprises in the back end there.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And what I've mentioned before, and I still hold true to this now, was my number one priority is to provide the best policing service I can to the municipality, the district of Sooke. I would rather have more police officers than a bigger building. If my officers have to work on top of each other in order for us to have more officers to provide that service, I will do that. If somebody needs to share my office, I'm happy to do that. Saying that, we will run to a point where we're too big for our breaches. We likely are going to be working with staff on a longer term plan into the 2030s. I envision this is more of we'll certainly talk about it in the next council, but this is more of a 2030s type of thing.
Okay.
And I'm hoping to realize our staffing plan as best that we could in order to catch up with our service before we start looking at that new building.
Yep. We might have to play this tape in the future.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have other general questions now?
Oh,
Or on the resolution where we're
yeah.
sitting
Oh,
at
yeah.
10%?
Yeah.
Okay.
Have
If you-
None
thank
for
you.
Staff Sergeant.
Okay. Thank you. You may come back depending on, thank you for being here today. Go ahead, Councillor Pearson.
Okay, yeah, and it was brought up in discussion. the asset management, and we're spending the asset management, which I'm glad that we're collecting the asset management, but I kind of was under the impression last year, and I could be wrong, is that that was kind of a savings account. But it looks like to me, on our budget sheets here, it's a working account. We're using it to update and fix things in the current time. It's not an asset management that, we get $10 million in the bank and then we can fix all the potholes and the bridge and all those things, right? Is that my understanding? Is we're using it by our spreadsheets here, we're using it as a working account. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'll have staff elaborate further.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Pearson. Yeah, that's correct. Basically, the asset management, getting the solid commitment from council every year to add hopefully 2% or whatever percent, some dedicated funding every year just allows our capital budgeting to have a known funding source for some of these projects when these emergency projects come up, et cetera. Yeah, ideally it would be great just to let money save up in there and then do these massive projects. And hopefully at some point we can get to there if future councils keep committing to the 2%, because if council remembers the presentation, when you supported the asset management, it was to do 2% a year for like the next, 20 years or so, and, reassess obviously after a few years here. But yeah, that was the goal, is that for the short term, we need this for for year to year capital projects. And then ideally there would be hopefully enough money collected on an annual basis that funds could gather up for the larger projects.
Okay. So then if we subscribe to asset management on an ongoing basis, it's a 2% tax increase per year. I thought that, and I could be wrong, I thought that that was coming out of revenue in a general sense. Every year we were going to dedicate 2% of our total. It's from the tax lift. Is that what you're telling me? Okay.
Yes, that is the model. Sorry, through the chair to Councilperson. That's the model that council supported, was net new 2% every year, not find efficiencies to create 2%. At least that's the direction that we've been following to date.
Yeah. Okay. I liked this sheet that we had last year that showed department, because it's a lot of busyness to try and get through to find out where the increases are. As an example, and humor me for a sec here. The municipal hall and fire hall 1, roof, siding, and windows and doors. And then I see the deduction comes out of the reserve fund of asset management. Is that correct?
Through the chair, I believe that project is funded by some money came from COVID fund, and a portion of it came from Fair Smart grant.
Okay.
And yeah, a portion of it from probably asset management. It came from different funding sources.
Okay. And then the other question I have on that is that it's coming under the heading of parks. So how do we choose the building, the roof, the siding as parks, and why is it coming out
Okay.
there? Can I ask through the chair? Yeah.
Through the chair, because parks has two parts of their operations, facilities and parks and environmental kind of things. This is the facility part of the parks department. I let Rachel to explain it more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Through the chair to Council Pearson. Yeah, the facilities angle with parks, as I see Ms. Hooper in the chambers today. It was always being handled by parks. It just wasn't clearly defined. So over the few years, we've been trying to more clearly define the facilities aspect of that responsibility that sat under the Parks Department. So that's why for now, at least in the current iterations of our department breakdown, is facilities still is with parks, and that's why their capital projects fall under parks. So it's always been there. It's just we're trying to be a bit more not trying, we're being more specific and intentional with the facilities aspect of that, because it is a huge portfolio and it takes a lot more finances and staff capacity than we were anticipating or realizing back in the day.
Okay. I have a couple. Do you want me to keep going with my questions?
You're almost at your time allocation. Why don't you ask one more and then we'll circle back, okay?
Oh, okay. I'm almost at my time.
Well,
No, I appreciate that.
procedural wise, you've gone over your time, but we're here to do readings of a
Okay.
budget, so.
I've got two other okay, so could staff explain to me on the risk if we deleted the consultant fees of 60K?
Through the worship to Councillor Pearson, I believe, are you talking about the zoning and building bylaw updates, consulting fees? So the risk, Marshall's in here. The risk is basically, we need to do these updates. Staff capacity, we weren't 100% sure on how much staff capacity was going to be available. So I don't think this work would stop. In the 10% option, all of the funding's been removed. Even in the 12% option, it was down to $30,000. In the 10% option, it's removed completely, and staff will just, if that's the option council supports, we'll take that away and reassess. We know this work still needs to be done, so we will just reassess on how we can either find additional funding if available, or do this work in-house with the existing resources.
Yeah, you've answered my question. Can it be done in-house? Right?
Exactly. So yes, I think that was the original idea. And then, you know, the timing of the essence, we know council and the community is eager for zoning and building bylaw updates. So, but yeah, there's a low risk to this work will still carry on. It just might be slightly delayed once we confirm staff capacity to bring the report forward.
Thank you. I have more questions, but I'll save them until my next second round. How's that? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor St. Pierre.
Hey, so through your worship to staff, my first question has to do with some comments that were made by some of our speakers, which I found very interesting. We have a huge amount of grant money that came in over the last few years, but seemingly we've had no increases in services or any additional services. I kind of find that, I know that's not possible. So I know it's also really unlikely for most people to actually know what the district is doing and what's going on under the hood, so to speak. So I'd really like, at this point in time, what have we been spending lots of grant money on it? If you can provide some indications of what sort of service level increases have we had? I know that when people are not actually getting a building permit, they're not necessarily caring that it's a lot faster to get a building permit now. But I'd like you to go provide some information, because whatever decision we make today, whether it be 10%, 8%, or 12%, this is also an opportunity for people to better understand what the hell we're doing.
Through your worship to Councillor St. Pierre, if you can just give me a second to pull up, like, because we've gotten to the member's point, millions of dollars worth of grants. So some of them were for COVID, during COVID times, that were used for emergency services, the fire hall renovation, and emergency operations center was created on the second floor downstairs with some of those funds, millions of dollars for various infrastructure projects have been received over the years. We don't get, I guess, if you can just give me a second, I can maybe review the grants a bit more. More of the grants are for one-time projects. They're not usually for ongoing service improvements, but that funding may have been the seed funding that started a project. So just give me a second to refresh my memory here.
While you're doing that, should I continue with other questions, or?
Sure. Sorry, Mr. Curry might be able to speak a little bit to it first.
Sure. Just while Ms. Gray grabs some more information through the chair to Councillor St. Pierre, because I've recently wrapped up the funding and the grant claims and the final report for the Little River project. That's a good example. That was originally budgeted for almost 3 million and finished just over 2 million. So it's almost $1 million less than expected. And that was 100% funded from a combination of grants and developer cost charges. So not 1 cent of tax dollars went towards that. So it was a combination of growing BC funds, funds received from the province a couple of years ago, and active transportation grant from the federal government, and another active transportation grant from the provincial government, and then the DCC factor as well, like finished the funding for it. So That's an example of one of the projects that's top of mind right now because it just wrapped up and we just finished the report. There is a big list of other grants that I'll pass back to Mrs. Gray if she wants to go down the list with you.
Highlights.
Through the chair to Councillor St. Pierre. So, yeah, some of the grants, like I said, are not really for day-to-day operations. They're for a one-time project to improve day-to-day operations. So indirectly, it helps improve service levels and services. You know, for example, like the BC Hydro Greening Grant we got improves, you know, the community and the parks. And that was, you know, again, just $7,500 for that one. We have the ICBC road safety improvements. That was a bunch of the speed reader boards, crosswalk improvements. So again, most of these grants are about helping supplement our low infrastructure capital budgets to make these projects happen. The Next Gen 911 was another huge grant. And to clarify, all of these grants need to be reported as revenue on our financial statements. So it's not net new revenue. It's not money we get to spend. We're only allowed to spend it on the specific project. We're not allowed to redeploy these funds as we see fit. And then as Mr. Curry stated, most of our grants, we got, you know, Fire Smart, we're very successful for around 200,000 every year for a Fire Smart grant that helps offset some of those costs in that department. And the majority of our grants, other than that, have been for major capital infrastructure projects like Mayor Tate said, Demamio, or Charters Road, Demamio Creek, Otter Point in the day. So, and the biggest service increase, you know, outside of grants that councils, the community has seen from their tax increases would be the implementation of 24/7 RCMP and fire coverage. That is a massive change in services over the last few years that council has supported.
Okay, thank you. That actually leads me to my next question, which is there was mention that the cost of staffing has increased tremendously. And I know that when we reached 15,000 people, we had to actually take on most of the costs, if not all the costs, I believe, of policing. I know that we also have a very low, I kind of hate this term, cop to pop. We don't have a good ratio in terms of our number of residents versus police officers. We also looked at 24/7 and we looked at 911 being essentially given to us as an expense. Aside from the 911, what does the firefighter and policing represent in terms of our overall increase in staff costs over the last 4 or 5 years? Are those numbers easy to get?
Through the chair, I believe we've got some breakdowns. If you can just give us a second, we
Yep.
can see if we can
No problem.
factor that in or get a bit more clarity on that.
Okay. And I will comment at this point that we also need a lot of staff. One of the reasons we can actually use all these grants and apply for all these grants is that we have the staff to actually notice them, apply for them, make sure we have the appropriate projects, not go looking for grants when we need them, not go just searching for grants, but we have projects, that's a grant we can use. And that actually saves the taxpayers a lot of money. And in this particular case, you know, tens of millions. But we still get, in some cases, infrastructure, libraries, sidewalks, charters, wastewater treatment plants, and who knows what else, without having to actually put that on the taxpayers, which is important.
Through the chair, I have this year's number for the IAFF labor cost. The tax increase just to support the our firefighters payroll cost is at 2.42% of tax increase, a total of $348,900 in increase, almost $349,000 increase in payroll cost to support the firefighters.
Are those numbers similar over the last 4 or 5 years?
Through the chair to Councillor St. Pierre, I have just some numbers here that's a 10-year history of costs. So for the fire department, I don't have it broken down by salary. I just have overall cost of the department. From 2016, it was $1,702,000, and then going to 2025, which is Oh, sorry, I read the wrong line. The fire was 1,201,000 in 2016. And then 2025 is 3,601,000. So from 1.2 million to 3.6 million over the 10-year course.
So not quite tripled.
Not quite, no.
Okay. And that's for firefighting. Do we have similar numbers for policing by any chance?
I do have the RCMP numbers here as well. That's 1.7 million from 2016 to 2025 is 3.9 million. It's actually 3.99, so you round it up to 4 million.
Okay.
That's to 2025, so that doesn't include 2026.
Okay,
What's
so not
proposed.
quite tripled and a little more over doubled. Okay. And we don't actually have numbers of what that would be representing in terms of the overall staff increases.
I do. So yes, I have the general government services, which would be the overhead of the rest of the budget. So the 2016 was 3.7 million for general government. So this is the rest of the district operations. And then to 2025, this is 6 million. It's actually 6.1 million.
Okay. So less than doubled.
That's correct. And this is the impact against taxes. Actually, I should just caution that I split this up as a portion of the tax increase. So this isn't the complete overall cost. This wouldn't include other services like related to revenue. I just wanted to run a 10-year history of essentially the impact of taxes and how that divides between police, fire, and general government. So there is offsets that would also like not be included, which would be like if there was an increase in building permit revenue and an increase in staff according to that, that wouldn't be included. This is just the breaking up the tax increase over the 10 years. I was just curious about the number. So it's there.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Haldane?
Yes, thank you. It's one quick question with staffing is through the chair. How many people work at the District of Sooke full-time basis now?
Through your worship, I believe full-time is 70 staff, including the paid on calls is just over 100 now. For the paid on call firefighters. So those are not permanent full-time staff. They're just with the paid on calls for the fire department. But I believe, yeah, the full-time FTEs is around 70 at this time.
Okay, so I looked through our charts, whatever, back to 2020, we had 39 people working in the District of Sooke. And then now we have 70, so we're looking at 31 more people working in the district. At this point, going through the books and looking at some of the numbers with revenues coming in, expenses, costs, we run into the situation where we're close to doubling our amount of employees in 6 years. And then we're running into a situation where our funding is obviously coming down. Our revenues are down, our expenses are up. Service costs are up, everything's just up through the roof. So private sector always calls on you to be able to make cuts or make exclusions. Something has to change or has to happen. And listening to a bunch of people in the audience here tonight about where we're at, how we are doing things. And again, given the world scenario, given our federal government, our provincial government, all these things, there has to be austerity measures that have to come to light here. We have to come to terms with what we're doing as an organization, how we're going to fix it. I don't have the expertise for that. I'm just a lowly carpenter, but I do have an understanding of how businesses run and how you can make ends meet and make things work. And I mean, it goes back to me further than that. I mean, we spent a lot of money on this OCP recently, and that costs taxpayers piles of money, but embedded into that OCP is all kinds of stuff that have to do with this budget. And this budget here says over the next 3 years, we spend 1.2 million fixing up our boardwalk. Well, that's a want. That's a expectation for people to have a place to go and do whatever. But the whole point is we can't afford it. And we can't afford new boardwalks. We can't afford new waterfront trails and parks and stuff, but they're all embedded into this new OCP. So how are we going to come up with the money for that? We can't even come up with money to fix the potholes. So we have to come to terms with reality. And it's sad that this document is this overreaching expectation of all this great stuff, this Wizard of Oz euphoria that we plan on living in one day, which would be great if we could get to that point. I don't see that happening unless we come across a lot of money at some time. So I'd like to see austerity measures, at least in the interim, in order to be able to make balanced budgets, make things meet here, so we're not at 12 and crazy 18% tax increases. I mean, I would like to see it 8%. I don't believe I'll get the support across the board here, but I do think that there's other ways we can get to where we're at without having to cut from some of the budgeting things talk about. I mean, everybody keeps talking about the 2% that we could cut, but we can't cut the 2% because we need it to fix up this building. And if it's a fund that we're using right now, it's impossible to cut it because that means we wouldn't be able to do any of the maintenance to the district stuff that we've already basically planned and are in the works of setting up right now. So I wouldn't know exactly where to go from here. I would like to see, after this motion passes or fails, a motion to have a hiring freeze on district staff until the end of this budget term. And I'd like it to be something more formal. I understand we brought it up that that's what we're planning on doing, but I'd like to see it be formal. And maybe I can have an opportunity to bring that up later in this meeting for that reason. You know, we have people who come up and speak and they talk about being okay with these large tax increases and stuff. But even in that document, the Fisher Community Plan did not identify a lot of the stuff that we need fixed up in the community that could have been done by a lot of the developments that are coming forward to us right now. A lot of expectation for new road infrastructures that can be done and paid for by development and developers as they rezone and get development permits for lands and stuff. They shouldn't be on the back of the taxpayer to have to come up with the funding for our through road connector, things like that, and even Water Street and all these other places that need this money. So I've said my piece. I understand where we're at. I just would like to see a better way to get there, and I haven't seen that yet. And I do appreciate all the work that's been done. Don't get me wrong here. I mean, it's complicated, it's large. I just look at it from a layman's set of eyes and a standard way to get there that I think is simpler than cutting our asset management plan, stuff like that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor McMath, who is online. Councillor McMath, I'm calling out to you to see if you have questions.
Yeah, I just need a second to unmute. I don't have any questions yet.
Okay, so any comments on the motion that's on the floor right now? No? Okay.
No.
So I'll go to second time councillors. Councillor Beddoes is next.
Yeah, sorry, Your Worship. I'm motivated before. I never really got a chance to speak other than the motivation. So I'd like an opportunity. I'd like to deal with what's before us, and we have the 10% object and then the 8% option. I'm certainly not in favor of the 8% option. I'd love to go to a 0%, but all these things cutting out, it would not be good for our community. On the 10% option, we already discussed that the police officer for the 67,000 drops us down to 11.5. I see, and I'm hoping some discussion from my fellow councillors, is the Sooke Community Association, which does a tremendous amount of work sort of on our behalf. They keep the playing fields and the community center going. They asked for 70,000 increase, and of course that's pretty rich. Is it possible to give them only half of it this year, and then phase it in over a few years? That would increase from 10% probably, a little higher to 10.5. And the last one, I have to agree with my fellow councillor Haldane, is I'm really not interested in seeing that 2% asset management dropped. So that involves another 0.5%. We struggled with that 2% asset management, and because we've seen over the last number of years, Sooke's built on an old landfill all over the place, logging roads. The pipes are all rotten in the ground. And if we don't plan for the future to come across some of these things, and you can just look recently at some of the potholes, not potholes, but roads sinking away and sinkholes that have filled in the roads, we have to have some money to respond to those for safety reasons. So I'm okay with the most of those things in that 10% column, but I would like to keep the asset management to the 2%. And I don't know about the Sooke Community Association. I'd be interested to hear what my colleagues say.
Okay, so just given that what is in front of us is 10%, would you like to put forward an amendment at this time to like a motion to amend the budget to increase the asset management to 2%? That would be in order.
Yes, I'll make that motion that we increase the asset management back from 1.75 to 2%.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Pearson, or pardon me, St. Pierre, sorry. Would you like to motivate any further on that increase? And then I'll also then ask staff just to do what that will do to the percentage.
Yeah, I think I motivated basically enough. I think it's crucial to us moving forward, especially, you know, in the last few days and with all the rain we had and some of those big not potholes, but roads washing away. And we have to fix it. It's safety. And so, yeah, I'm okay with that motion.
Councillor St. Pierre. Okay. May I just ask from staff, if you could just clarify, we're sitting at 10, this amendment would put us at.
Thank you. Through the chair, the increase, the dollar amount is $72,244. That's actually 0.5%.
Okay. So that
will be at 10.5%.
10.5%.
Right.
Okay. Any other councillors wish to speak to the amendment? Councillor Pearson?
I hear the principle of the ask, but I'm not comfortable increasing the tax. You know, we came with 8 and 10 was what we passed at the last meeting. This is an amendment to that, and it feels like we're doing an amendment on the fly to asset management. I get that, but that's, you know, I got told at the last meeting that we picked 12% out of thin air to budget. We got told that at last meeting. A councillor told me that threw a number up there at 12. And now suddenly we're trying to struggle with 8 and 10 or 8 and 10. And now we're saying, okay, well, you know what? We're having another sober second thought on increasing it back up. So it feels like to me, it's scope creep. Okay, well, because, you know, I don't want to be the person who votes against the community association getting their money either. But asset management, there was a proposal by staff. I get it. Things are tough. And we're going to get 1.75% asset management as opposed to 2%. What's the difference? 77,000. But again, what's the message we're sending out there? You know, I would, if somebody came to me with a different proposal, not increasing something that was on there, you know, do we cut another budget? Do we cut another thing? Do we look for operational efficiencies? Do we cut council's travel budget? I'd rather not start increasing and start picking and choosing in the middle of a process. We've got 8 and 10. People are telling us right now that they can't afford the 10%. And then we're gonna, you know, yeah, it feels good, but we should do that. I don't like feeling good. I like it to be based on information and away we go. We haven't even heard from anybody what the CRD increase is on the 820,000. We know what it is. It's 5 point, what was it? I think through the chair. I know, and it's not fair to ask.
I don't remember.
But it's up there. It's another 5%. And then what's the library fees and it's not $240 a year for the average household. It's going to be $300 and something. And we know that. And that's starting to affect people. $30 a month is maybe how they buy diapers.
Okay, so
anyway, no, I'm not supporting the motion.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, getting back to the amendment. Anyone else on the amendment? Counselor McMath, I understand is her hand up. Okay, go ahead, please.
Just a clarity on the amendment, is this amendment including the asset management and the community association?
It's just the asset management. We can do a series of other amendments as council wishes to add or remove, but this one specifically is just asset management.
It is solely for asset management. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments from members of council? So I will speak in favor of this. We have an asset management policy finally. We need to find and put revenue aside for our capital budget. It's not wages, it's simply capital improvements or repairs to infrastructure, which over the decade and some that I've been here has been a ongoing concern, whether it's culverts or piping or roads or other items that are failing around town. And largely, unfortunately, I don't think residents see this because there is nothing new. It's just fixing what is in the ground and which we need, as opposed to dealing with a closure. So in terms of picking numbers out of the air, council sat through several meetings, including a committee of the whole, where eventually it's like, okay, where do you want to be? And that is what started the discussion, because at some point we have to conclude this and move on to other business of the municipality. So that is where that decision point was made. And it brings us here to today. So I am in support of the asset management. It's much like a rainy day fund. If you own a house, you need to think about your future roof, your future replacement to your plumbing, your future repairs to toilets, replacing windows and doors and gutters and anything else that might fail in your home. Similarly with your car, you get a rock to your windshield, you need to find money for the deductible, you need to pay for anything that fails when your warranty runs out, or if it's not covered, it's general housekeeping. So it's prudent and wise, and I'm in support of it. So I'm going to call the question on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment? Any opposed to the amendment? Councillor Pearson is opposed. Councillor Haldane is opposed. Councillor McMath, I'm uncertain, so I'm assuming you're in favor unless I hear otherwise. I don't see you on the screen. So just call out if I'm incorrect. So that passes, or that carries on 5-2. So going to our next speaker, I'll go back to who had the floor, which was Councillor Beddoes. Was there anything further now that we have an amended motion on the floor? Is there anything further that you would like to add or say at this time? Okay, other members of council, I believe Councillor Pearson was next. So I'll turn it over to Councillor Pearson, and this would be your opportunity. If you so wish to remove something, you can make an amendment to delete something, or you can add something. That's up to you.
Through the chair, thank you. What is the source of the extra $2.815 million shown in fees and charges? And that's on.
You maybe narrow it down to what.
Well, it's on. Okay, hang on.
Because there we have 12 attachments.
Yeah, it was just a general revenue coming in, right? So hang on. I circled it on here. Let's see what that was all about. It seemed odd. It seemed like an odd number to me. Increased fees and revenues.
I'll ask our.
It was on revenue.
Director of Finance to maybe.
Did have it circled. So, well, I do. Got way late on that amendment.
Know which attachment you're on?
Yes, I was good to. I had it circled. Of course, then I got delayed on the article. It was on revenue coming in, revenue. Okay. 26, 23, it's right there, that one right there. That one.
I think it's attachment 11.
Page 161 of 163.
Page 11,
Fees
maybe?
and charges, and it's Parcel tax is 2.8 million, and then fees and charges. What makes up that fees and charges?
Okay, that's on attachment 11. Thank you.
Page 161. Seems to be. It's decreasing by 700,000 in the next couple of years, and then down to 2.2 and then 2.2 million. So not the fees and charges. And I was looking for a 2025.
The chair.
Yeah.
Councilor Pearson, if I understand your question clearly, you're asking why it's increased.
Yeah,
So
it's,
much.
well, it's
Yeah.
decreasing in the next 5 years. So
Okay,
yeah, so how did it increase, right,
Okay.
over 2025? And what is, I guess, what makes up fees and charges?
sure. Okay,
And why
so
did it jump by?
the incremental is triggered by the sewer connection fees. We have 136 lots in the works.
Okay,
So the sewer manager just did a calculation saying, assume like all those hookup all take place.
okay.
Will bring in $1.44 million just in connection fees. And all of the 100% of that 1.44 million will be transferred to sewer expansion reserve.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that money will not be spent anywhere else. It will go to the sewer expansion reserve.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the majority of that revenue.
Excellent. Okay, and then my next question was, can we, as a district through the chair, can we decrease the amount that we're paying to Econ? Just write them a check for a different amount? Because, well, no, because why I'm asking is because it's now a different amount than what we were told. So that's a significant difference and a significant amount of money. So are we allowed to do that? Through the chair?
Probably not, given that we are in a binding long-term agreement, and that agreement spells out what local governments pay for. And through that whole mess, for lack of a better word, it was determined by other entities, namely the province, that local governments are to pay this. So it would be like not paying our utility bill. So unfortunately not, but to residents, that's 4% of your taxes to make 911 calls. We had advocated for an alternative, putting a cell phone levy because cell phones are increasing and landlines are not. That has not, we're waiting to see if there's any appetite by the province to consider that. So no, unfortunately, that's a long answer, but
So it's been answered by the chair. So, and the reason I ask that is that some of these costs that are just being dumped on us by the province, we don't have an option, and it's causing a lot of anxiety, and the system is unfair. Like, again, I'm going to say that I have a cell phone, I don't have a house phone, but I can call 911 from anywhere, and I'm not paying for 911. Anyways, that's just my little rant. We've talked about the RCMP. Okay, so I don't have any extra questions at the moment. I think I have one more here, but I'll kind of go through it because now I got lost. Thank you.
okay. Anyone else? Like, we are sitting now at 10.5. Would other counselors like to propose any amendments or have any questions? Or would you just like to make a statement about where we're at? Counselor Bateman.
Yeah, I have a question, and that's, thank you, Councillor Haldane, for raising this point around the Pier and Boardwalk expansion project. So all of that money is coming out of the Community Works Fund, the gas tax, and also a little bit of casino funding. So these are not tax-based. But I was thinking, okay, so in 2027, there's dedicated 555,000 from Community Works. Now that Community Works, is that not also possible to use, to bank and use in a kind of asset management?
No,
It's not.
No, that has been an issue and an ongoing advocacy one where sometimes when grants are shared a third through the different entities of government, we don't have our third. So it would be prudent for us to save that. And then, no, you can't. You receive it and it needs to be used and it needs to be spent on specific items per that overall agreement. So no, you cannot save it. I think maybe 2 years you can.
Yeah.
You can hold up to 2 years and then it has to be reported out. If otherwise, the argument, because all the other related grants in that whole stream are always oversubscribed. So if we're not spending the money, then they will take it and allocate it, reduce our share because we're not using it and allocate it to other local governments that do advocate and need the funding. So no, it has to be used. Is there anything further that, or clarity, or if I'm wrong?
Yeah, to Council President through the chair, I was just going to clarify, staff are required to report on an annual basis, the ins and outs of that reserve fund. And I know in the past I have had questions from the facilitators of this program of how come you guys haven't spent enough money? How come you haven't done this project? Or well, how come this one that was on the books for a few years? Because once we spend a bit of money on a project, it sits in their queue and we're reporting out on it. So while we can save some of it, we don't have to spend every dollar every year per se for a larger project. That is per Meritate. The intent is that it's supposed to be actively used and reinvested into the community as much as possible.
Okay. Yeah, I see the 555,000 in 2027 going towards phase 2 Pier and Boardwalk expansion to the Prestige, which in this day and age would be a nice to have, not an essential. So I imagine at this time next year, a number of like that will be reassessed and perhaps redirected to.
It would be redirected to what's eligible in the program. Anything else? Okay, Councillor Haldane?
Yeah, since 2022, our revenues in the building department are down $332,557. So rather than us making more money as a district and we say there's all this building going on and Sooke's out of control or whatever, as far as development, yet we're down 332,000. What's that as a tax increase? Is that 3%, 4%? So we're looking at trying to find ways to again, keep funding this organization, but we have less money coming in to fund it. So at some point, something has to give. And sadly, we're looking at little tidbits within this thing here. And the elephant in the room is there is other ways of cutting without having to go into asset management. So again, I think we have other options here and we're not covering them, but I'll once again say that when times are tough, we have to make tough decisions. We're expected to lead in this community. And I'm going to point out the obvious. We have to cut back. It's as simple as that. We can't keep expecting taxpayers to pay crazy increases of 8, 10, and 12% every year, year after year. And if you look at the 5-year plan, it's going up for the next bunch of years. And apparently there's going to be some relief in 5 years, but who knows? The next councils may find ways of spending more money than we have coming in at that point too, and we'll be up to another 10 or 20% increase. So
you may also find that another order of government will pass a bill down for us to pay. We pushed back on the 4% for e-com. The RCMP unionized. At one point, there was a lot of commentary out of the House of Commons that the federal government would absorb the retro. Then they chose not to, so that became a local government expense. We are at risk through the Vancouver Island Major Crime Unit. So to residents here, are those online, if a homicide occurred in our community, we are on the hook for the full expense. That would be over potentially $1 million of what is not covered right now, of what we've advocated to be included into a program, sort of like an insurance program along with other local governments. However, that program is closed. It has been closed since 2016 and we are unable to access that. which is why establishing the General Investigation Services, the GIS department, would help as a preventative way to hopefully see what is coming on the ground. Other things were like the cost of hardware and software. These are all decisions in how our CMP is kitted out. Those are not local government decisions, but we're handed the bill. So again, getting to what Councillor Pearson and others have said, so local government tax framework is antiquated. This was established under the reign of Queen Victoria over a century ago, when largely we were moving around by horses, and it's never been changed since, or on foot. Yet this demands on local governments and modernizing where we're at have increased tenfold. There are some advocacy and there is a whole discussion underway led by the Union of BC Municipalities to change the formulation of the Community Works funding, but that is that's an agreement between the federal and provincial governments. So where that's going to land, I don't know. It's an advocacy role that we have. So again, the cost pressures are real. We've provided some. You've heard of casino revenue. That helps to offset some. Why are we not receiving any funding for online gambling, which is also taking place and creating harm throughout our community, of which we receive nothing. Cannabis is now a legal substance, of which we receive no sin tax for. However, it was one that we had to bust up grow ops. Our police officers were dealing with possession charges, court files, and the like. That's now clean money running through our community, of which we receive none. The cell phone levy, again, is another of which we receive none. So there's other ways of which we've tried to diversify, but they're not our decision to make. And I hope that some of you that are interested take this advocacy up to our MLA and to our member of parliament so that they too are part of this conversation, because they're part of the decision-making model and we're just paying the bill. Councillor McMath, you're online. I'll go to you next.
Sorry, previously I got pulled away, or speaking of, a 911 call. But just going back, so our goal from our 2025 5-year budget plan was to hit 2026 with a 9.7%. I'm just looking at the way that this is sort of framed. So what would our tax increase be this year if it weren't for some of those provincial downloads that we're experiencing right now?
I'll ask I think I see Miss Lou taking out her calculator, so I'm just going to give her a moment to reply back to that. From our last committee of the whole discussion, though, I'll share that of 12%, which I know residents don't like, how that breaks down. 4.04% was dedicated to our CMP, 3.04% to fire, 0.08% to debt, 2% to asset management. Your municipal operations are 2.84%. That all adds up to 12%. So in terms of the concerns about municipal operations, that is 2.84%, likely a bit less of your overall 12%. And then I'll just wait for Ms. Liu to. Here we go.
Through the mayor, to answer your question, if Ecom 911 remains the same invoiced amount as last year, that was the 290,000, and this increased to $430,560. If the billing remains unchanged, we would save 1% on the tax dollars. So if there wasn't Ecom 911 billing at all, if we paid nothing, we would save 3%.
Right. Okay. So just because when the community is trying to understand like where this increase comes from, besides our own pressures, I just don't know if we're highlighting enough how much of that is out of our control and how Sooke is trying its best to pinch where it can, and it's making cuts unfairly due to those downloads. So I think we can do a better job of communicating that as we go forward with this budget cycle.
Well, thank you for expressing it, Councillor McMath. It's appreciated. Okay, so council, we're back to the where we are. Right now, we're sitting with an amended motion at 10.5%. Are there any other speakers on this? Councillor St. Pierre.
Okay, so at this point, I imagine we're making comments before calling the question. It's my guess, but
yeah, that's because what is on the floor is this is the first, second, and third readings. Okay. Should this pass, the next part would be open house or a budget open house for April the 8th. That motion is still pending, depending on the outcome of this one. So this would be your opportunity to weigh on this.
Okay.
And then if it doesn't pass, then we'll see where that goes next.
Okay, so I'd like to say, first of all, that I do agree with concerns that this is entirely untenable, that we cannot actually manage ongoing even 10% increases, let alone 12 or so on and so forth. That's the case. Largely because it's based on an antiquated taxing regime, which basically says that it all falls on the property owners and all falls on property taxes. Meanwhile, 93% of our taxes in various other forms go to the province and the feds. 7% is collected through property taxes. Of that, half of it goes towards our operations. The rest goes towards libraries and so on and so forth. So of the tax dollar, 3.5% is actually coming to us through the property taxes. There's no way property tax continue to pay for sinkholes and all the rest of the stuff that we have to pay for and ongoing management and taking care of everything. But we're trying to actually manage things in an intelligent way so that we actually have money set aside for the next sinkhole, for the next thing that burns down or breaks down or whatever it is. There's two ways, honestly, that we can look at this. We can say, let's tighten the belts. That's one way. I think the other things we can do are we have to push back on other levels of government for other revenue sources and for fair distribution of the revenue that's out there to pay for the things that we need and not to have to beg for it through grants. We need the money that's needed to actually pay for asset management up front so we can actually maintain our assets. It's ridiculous to expect otherwise when we don't have the ability to tax property owners enough to actually pay for those things to be done. So there's a huge advocacy piece here where we need to be getting money from the right sources. Money for services through cell phone should come through cell phone bills. That's all there is to it. Meanwhile, it's coming to the property owners again. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense that every service, including, honestly, services that are desperately needed by lots of people that are renting in the community, are still paid by the property owners. But we need parks, we need schools, we need libraries, we need services. Those services are needed by everyone in the community, and especially the people who have the least amount of money, who are not necessarily the property owners, but everybody needs them. This system doesn't work. Meanwhile, what can we do? If we actually cut back, really cut back, for example, we cut back on economic development, what does that do? Well, it means that we don't have the money that would come from property taxes on commercial properties, which are much more than residential. That would actually help us. It's something we can control. We need to invest in the places that can actually develop other revenue sources to take the pressure off residential taxpayers. I would hope that in the future we have a smart way of going about this. We don't just decide, hey, we're going to save money by cutting back on economic development. Because if we do that, it's going to bite us. Right now, we're moving from 12 to 2 or 12 to 10.5. I think we should have stayed at 12. Why? Because we need the money to actually spend, and we need the money to protect the people who need it. I understand that property owners can't be paying this forever, and it's no good. That's a given. But in the meanwhile, I will support this 10.5% as it stands. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other comments, Councillor Pearson?
Yeah. Lots has been said, and again, it's, one more time. Oh yeah, we just have to pay one more time. And you know what? I feel taxpayers have reached their threshold and they've been there for a long time. My colleague next to me, I don't disagree that the system's broken, but we can't just keep asking one more time. Oh, one more time. And it was supposed to be 9% this year. We got told that last year. We swallowed reluctantly 15.59 or whatever it was last year with the idea that we'd be at 9% this year and that we have a plan forward to get it. Yep, the province downloads. There's always somebody's downloading something. I don't know. It doesn't feel right to continually just say, okay, one more time. We're at an important juncture in our political careers as well. I have 3 questions. Would the Sooke School District pay partially for the liaison officer? I don't know. I never asked that question. Could the district share e-com expenses with nearby municipalities? And the answer, we already know that, right? I don't know. I don't know. It just seems to me like, we're telling everybody, we're turning over every rock and everything, but no, one more time. And I don't like it. Came here with the idea of being at 10%, which I didn't like, and now we've increased that. And everyone's, everybody's okay increasing it. And then, I heard it, I suggested increase it again. No, I can't support this on an ongoing basis. It just doesn't sit well with me, because the people who are paying it are everybody that's out there, and they're expecting hard decisions from us. Doesn't feel right. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. Other final speakers? Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, so I'll vote in support of this. I agree with Councillor St. Pierre. I think the 12% would have been okay. That would have been $240. We're coming in at a $210 increase. I do agree. I mean, key points here. And it's just a broken record. Police, fire, asset management. Police, the cop to pop ratio is a disgrace. We're the second highest in BC currently. And that's just a recipe for burnout, for recruitment issues, a whole range of things. So we're beginning to address that. Not at the speed the RCMP would appreciate, but we're doing what we can. Likewise with our fire department, we have promised, this council promised in 2023, or made a commitment, at least, promise is the wrong word, to get you up to 20 firefighters. You're taking a patient approach with one new hire annually as we move forward, as opposed to, I think we were looking at 2 back in the day. The asset management piece, the recent issues at Blythewood, Dufour, Goodmere, these all need to be dealt with in the immediate present. What I'm happy to see is this continuing support for our community service agreements. And, as much as we've taken quite a hardline approach to permissive taxes, and with that's one of those measures. Nonprofit housing are losing their permissive tax exemptions, phased over 5 years. But we are continuing to support all those service agreements, from the food bank to the community association, the community hall, Wildwise Sooke, Harmony Project, Amber Academy, Sooke Family Resource Society, with its very important work in prenatal and youth navigator services for young people who are challenged. I'm sorry that the community association is not going to get its money this year, and I know they have a fair-sized reserve fund, and hopefully they can continue. But I think that their message was received loud and clear, that we do need to support those important recreational facilities. So yeah, so just a reminder, as Mayor Tate just did, police in this budget is 35%, fire is 21%, asset management is 17%, and municipal services, which include all those community service contributions, is 24%. So 10.5%. Thank you.
Any other comments? Councillor McMath, is there any final comments you would like to make?
No, thank you.
Okay, anything from anyone else? I'll comment that I was in favor of the 12%. Having sat here where we heard from the business community, particularly on how recent events are impacting them, not just recent, but ongoing. Having received the reports from our base commander, who kindly is taking the time to deliver in council, to give the story a bit behind the various numbers and the cost pressure, and the department response that they have met, and the challenges they face, was where I supported the 12%, seeing boots on the ground in a more immediate fashion than waiting longer. We are not a community, we are vulnerable to fire. We have had a recent event that has a ripple effect. It didn't just impact the business owners, but their suppliers, their customers, anyone passing by. Where was another fire unexpectedly accidental in a very busy, dense neighborhood. But again, due to a quick response, those matters were contained and did not spread. So the need for fire remains one, and we are still vulnerable to wildfire. What this will look like this year, I don't know, but I spend most of July working with our emergency operations center and the media because something breaks out. Usually accidental, but spreading quite quickly towards households. So it's a stressful time of year, considering all things. In addition to what we're hearing on the ground in our CMP. The rest of it is sort of status quo with the community association. If they are unable to access others, then they will pass that fee on to the users of those. So that'll be families that will pay higher registration fees, families that will fundraise, look for sponsorships, because that's how it goes. These are important amenities that service a large population, primarily our youth and our families, and they're taking a hit there. So I am struggling to support 10.5% because I think it should be 12. I think we do 10 now, 10.5, it means a higher, then the future council can wear the increase. I'd rather come in higher and have that council come in lower in future years. Isn't that a political thing to make? Kick it down the road and let the future people deal with it, as opposed to making the difficult decision now and letting efficiencies prevail and a lower increase be the gift that the future council gives. But it is what it is. I think that if I don't support this, we're going to land with another defeated budget, another scheduled meeting, potentially another delay to getting on with anything that the district is doing. We have a roof to this building that needs to be replaced. Staff need time to put together the tender. The roof can only be done in a certain time of year, or it won't happen at all. And then you wonder why we didn't spend the money that we raised taxes for. It's because we have run out of time, and time is never on our side. So begrudgingly, I will support the 10.5% and leave it at that. And I'm going to call the question now. All those in favor? And opposed is Councillor Haldane and Pearson. Councillor McMath, I'm not hearing you, so sorry.
I have my hand up for against.
Okay, so you're opposed or in favor?
Opposed.
Okay, so that passes on a 4-3. And I'll move to our next motion, and that is that council directs staff to schedule a budget open house for Wednesday, April 8th, 2026 from 2:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. here in council chambers. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Haldane. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. And that I will turn to a motion to adjourn the special meeting by Councillor Pierce or St. Pierre. And seconded by Beddoes. All in favor of adjournment? None opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here today.